You mentioned your dad and you mentioned your family, and I want to go back to making your racing names on the bull ring, Las Vegas, 3/8 mile asphalt track, Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And you're running against local hobbyists at the time. And, your dad had kind of blazed the trail initially anyway, right? Tom was a mechanic at a Ford dealership, and all of a sudden he was running short tracks. What are those earliest memories for you and of that?
Yeah. Well, I think I was at the racetrack. I might have been 2 days old or 2 weeks old. I've never gotten confirmation from my mom, but it's one or the other. Same as my kids, I guess. So, to me, my earliest memories were my dad racing. Obviously, he raced in limited late models, and then moved up to late models, and he was always kind of doing different things. And different guys would call him and ask him to drive their cars, and he would do it. And so, it was always kind of cool to go to the racetrack every weekend. I was never allowed in the pit area. You always had to be in the grandstands because rules were different back then. Minors weren't allowed, things like that. But he was always fast. He was always competitive. He was winning. There was a year he won 15 out of 16 races and he was booed. Like, he was booed a lot because the fans just didn't want to see the same guy winning every week. And we didn't have a lot of money. So it wasn't like we were outspending the rest of the competition. My dad was just outsmarting him and being better with his car and having an understanding of his car and a feel for his car and how to make it better and what he needed to do and what he needed in it to be able to be faster than the rest of the competition. And so, those, I remember just him winning a lot and always just, that was instilled in me early on. And to me, that's what I wanted to do. And when I was a kid, when I started racing, I didn't win right away. And I was like, oh no, I'm not good. Like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not like my dad. This sucks, and then boom, a switch flipped and I started winning, and then I started winning all the time. And then I was winning everything, and same thing. I was getting booed and all this stuff, so I was like, okay, this is kind of what it's like. This is, what my dad was feeling and what he was all about. But it's about the work you put in, the work ethic you put in, the drive and the determination that you have. And, being instilled in it at such a young age, and being in the garage at 7, 8 years old, working on your own cars, working on your brother's cars, when he started racing, because he started before I did, that just gave me that, that fire and that desire and that passion to be able to want to go out there and do it.
And you were on the dime, as your dad once said, racing your brother at all times. And there was just a little bit of competitiveness between the two of you, right?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
Right.
Uh, we, I'm trying to think back. So we had a race one time where I was running for national points. It was a Friday night race, and Kurt was off racing Southwest Tour, so he wasn't always there. So he wasn't really racing for points. But this was early on. This was in my first year of racing. And so he came back to race against us one night, and he was supposed to let me win. My dad was like, look, we're racing for national points. Kyle's close. Like, we need to win. And so on the last lap, like, he was leading and we were trading the lead back and forth. We were racing and dicing it up. And on the last lap, he got to my inside and he nosed ahead of me and he beat me to the line by like 6 inches. And so I was so mad. Like, I was really, really, really mad. But at the same time, like, I didn't know it at that time, but thinking back on it, I'm like, I shouldn't have been mad because he shouldn't let me win. Like, I should have to earn it. But that was probably one of the best lessons I think I ever had, was in that moment. The next night, we raced again on Saturday night. The next night I went out and set fast time, new track record, won the trophy dash, and started sixth. Kurt started fifth. I beat him to the lead, getting to the lead through traffic. And then I took off and I ran as hard as I could, and he never caught me. And I won that night. And so from that day and age right there, I was like, okay, it's not always going to be given to you. It's not always going to be easy. You shouldn't expect things to be given to you. You're going to have to work hard for them. And so that was probably one of the first lessons of Kyle Busch that made me who I was, that I'm going to be a pissed off race car driver, and I'm going to go out there and do whatever I got to do to win. I don't care what I got to do. But the flip side of that story is my dad was so mad after that race because I ran super hard. This is his equipment, right? It's his cars, it's his engines, it's his stuff. But I ran the car so hard to run away, and Kurt ran so hard to catch me. We lapped up to fifth place in the race. And so my dad was mad that we were just burning up his equipment. And, so that was another piece of, we didn't have a lot of money, and we raced with what we had, so we had to take care of our stuff.
Before we get back to this interview, I want to say that this episode is brought to you by Connected by Reynolds and Reynolds. If you want to hear great conversations and Greg Euland going deep with guests on everything from used car acquisitions to finding your niche and selling to it, I recommend adding Connected to your podcast rotation. Now let's get back to my interview.
While you two were racing together in NASCAR years later, did your dad offer any advice between the two of you?
No, there was actually a time in 2007 we crashed each other. He blamed me for the wreck for about 10 years. And then finally he came around and admitted that he crashed me in that wreck, that it was his fault. Because we didn't talk for a year and a half, Kurt and I, after the crash. We didn't talk at all. I hated him. And, we finally came to somewhat of an agreement to disagree. And it was grandma. Grandma was like, look, I want to have my birthday or Thanksgiving dinner, one or the other. And I want you both to be there, blah, blah, blah. So we were there together and we had dinner with grandma. So that was kind of finally when we started talking again. And our relationships calmed back and we've been good since, but finally when he admitted that he crashed me, I was like, okay, we can be brothers again.
But Tom never intervened in that decade and said, look, guys, enough.
No, it was grandma that did. Tom, I think he's a competitor, so he knew, right? Like he knows we both want to win. He basically raised us to be these gladiators that go out there and want to kill everything in their path, So
Right.
He didn't know, like he would talk to Kurt on the side. He would talk to me on the side. There were probably some things in there where he was like, just call your brother. But you know how that is when you're always right, when you're young and you know everything, you don't make those calls. But it's all come around, and my dad has been around and has been a presence of Kurt and I our entirety in NASCAR.
Brotherly love and brotherly competition, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So who wins a wrestling match?
I do for sure. Yeah. I got him beat by about 30 pounds. So.
Okay.